Ethan has just proclaimed God's oath, sworn by his own holiness, that David's throne stands forever, established like the moon, a faithful witness in the heavens. The music still hangs in the air. Then the psalm turns. But thou hast cast off and abhorred. Thou hast been wroth with thine anointed. Psalm 89, verse 38. Ethan speaks to God, naming what he sees. The word but breaks the promise wide open. God swore an everlasting covenant. Yet here stands a king cast off, abhorred, the object of divine wrath. Ethan does not soften the contradiction. He puts it before God's face. Thou hast made void the covenant of thy servant. Thou hast profaned his crown by casting it to the ground. Psalm 89, verse 39. The crown, once a sign of God's favor upon David's line, now lies in the dust. Ethan uses the word profaned. The crown that represented something sacred has been treated as common and discarded. This is covenant language turned upside down. What God established, God has unmade. Thou hast broken down all his hedges. Thou hast brought his strongholds to ruin. Psalm 89, verse 40. The fortifications that once protected the king's territory now stand in rubble. Ethan pictures Judah's defenses stripped away, leaving the nation exposed to every enemy. The hedges that kept danger out no longer exist. All that pass by the way spoil him. He is a reproach to his neighbors. Psalm 89, verse 41. Travelers plunder what remains. They take from a kingdom too weak to resist. Neighboring nations who once feared or respected Judah now mock her. The king, who was to be exalted above the kings of the earth, has become an object of contempt. Thou hast set up the right hand of his adversaries. Thou hast made all his enemies to rejoice. Psalm 89, verse 42. Ethan states that God himself lifted the enemy's hand. This is not misfortune or the natural consequence of political weakness. Ethan attributes the reversal to God's action. He refused to explain away the crisis with secondary causes. Thou hast also turned the edge of his sword, and hast not made him to stand in the battle. Psalm 89, verse 43. The king's weapon fails him in combat. God once promised to beat down David's foes before his face. Now, the sword itself turns dull in the king's hand. He cannot hold his ground. Thou hast made his glory to cease, and cast his throne down to the ground. Psalm 89, verse 44. The throne that God swore would endure as the sun and the moon now sits in the dirt. Ethan uses the same imagery from earlier in the psalm, but now he reverses it. What he once celebrated appears shattered. The days of his youth hast thou shortened. Thou hast covered him with shame. Selah. Psalm 89, verse 45. The king's vigor is cut short before its time. Shame now covers him like a garment. Ethan ends this section with a Selah, calling for a pause. The reader must sit with this tension. The covenant promised permanence, but the present reality shows ruin. Ethan lays it before God. He refused to pretend that the crisis does not exist. He refused to abandon the language of covenant, even while questioning how the covenant and catastrophe can coexist. This honesty models a prayer that brings unresolved pain into God's presence. He does not explain it away.